So much media, so little time. Who keeps track of it all? That would be me. This is Bob Andelman, and this is the Mr. Media Interview, broadcast and recorded live on blogtalkradio.com from the new media capital of the world, St. Petersburg, Florida. The first contact I ever had with Ed Droste was when I spotted a wreck of a boat along the north side of the Courtney Campbell Causeway in Clearwater, Florida. I had seen the wreck before, but this time someone had painted Hooters on the hull in bright orange paint. Hooters Restaurant, the original, had opened near the apartment in which I lived, and it was already the talk of the town, thanks to its scantily clad, smart-mouthed waitresses, delicious chicken wings, ice-cold beer, and casual atmosphere. That, and its single billboard across the street, featuring future Playboy playmate, Lynn Austin. I was a correspondent for the St. Petersburg Times back then, a cub reporter, and I convinced my editor that we should write about these Hooters guys, of which Droste was one of the 6 founders. It's a story I've gone back to again and again over the years because it's never gotten dull. The company, which passed $1 billion in revenues last year and has hundreds of restaurants in dozens of countries, will celebrate its 25th anniversary in October. Man, I can't believe I lasted this long. or that the restaurant did. And nobody understands what it takes to get the media's attention better than Ed Droste. Ed, welcome to Mr. Media.
Thank you, Mr. Media. We've come a long ways together, haven't we?
It has been a ride, hasn't it?
And never dull, and I can't believe we've lasted this long. To quote you.
Well, I suspect there's a few people out there who are not only surprised, but frankly wish that you hadn't. But I'm glad you're here.
You know, there were tons of articles back in those days, everyone basically predicting when the demise would come. You know, if it'd be a year, 2 years, 5 years, and we're pretty much institutionalized now, I hope.
I would think. How many, now I'm not sure, how many restaurants now, all total?
Well, that makes 2 of us. It's hard to keep up with. It's over 450, I think, but there's, one opening about every week. Our most recent was in Beijing, which is going to put us right in the middle of all that activity. I think Tel Aviv is opening, a couple more in Australia. It's hard to keep up with, especially the 27 or 28 countries that we're in now.
Oh, it is that many. I knew it was quite a few. But when Hooters goes to Beijing, do you have to make Do you have to make adjustments for?
Very few, frankly. We hire a lot of trainers go in that are domestic, based here, and they go in and work with all local talent. And you've got some of the language issues, but a lot of the same menu items. We tweak a few things. There's social mores to be aware of that, in different cultures, people view the, waitresses or waiters in different likeness or, different viewpoint. So we have to go out of our way to continue to elevate the girls and keep them on a pedestal so that, they get that fame and respect that's so critical to our brand.
When you go into a place like Beijing, if I walked in there today, would it be largely native waitresses, or would there be some American girls working there?
Very few American. And when they open, yes, with the trainers there'll be tons. But now, when you go in now, it's their very own version of a Chinese Hooters girl. They don't get the tans, they don't do that whole beach thing like our gang in California and whatever does, but for all intents and purposes, you're in their neighborhood version of a Hooters.
Is there a Hooters in Singapore?
Yes.
Really?
We're in Taipei, and I'm trying to think, a couple more. The Eastern Mideast has done well. South America is doing fabulous. Mexico's doing outstanding. Canada is it started out a little bit slower, but now Canada's kicking butt, and Europe is just starting to kick in gear. There's a very successful store in Athens, Greece.
It's amazing to think of all these different places. And I mean, what about like in a place like Tel Aviv? Do you have to make cultural adjustments there?
Well, oddly enough, it's in a, and now I'm talking like I'm a very much of an expert here, but because I've been to neither. But, you know, I hear stories from the, you know, the frontier, but, no, it's in like a tourist area, you know, a resort area, so it's very much, you know, just bringing our little style of a day at the beach, you know, America's oasis, and bringing it into a foreign area and becoming that oasis in that location, and people flock to it. Everyone likes that day at the beach. Everyone likes that casual escape that's needed even more so now, you know, than when we opened 25 years ago.
You know, I spoke recently to someone with the Four Seasons hotel chain, and they were telling me about opening their first hotel in India, and they went out of their way to. I think there's a Chinese restaurant in the hotel, and there's an Italian restaurant, and they brought in head chefs from China and Italy because they wanted to be so precisely Italian and Chinese in each restaurant. And they got battered when they opened by the press because the critics were upset that they hadn't Indianized it enough and added enough, you know, the hot taste, and I thought that was very interesting. So I was kind of curious if that kind of thing affects.
That is an ongoing debate. It's funny whether in every franchise that's the plus or minus of the big question. We saw it in Mexico, for example. One of the issue is, all right, you're bringing especially for a concept like ours that prides itself in being a part of the neighborhood, just entrenching. We want to be unique. We want to be refreshing. We want to be that oasis, but we also want to be the place, the neighborhood joint everybody goes and is comfortable. So the fine line you walk is, in one respect, do you weave in things? And in Mexico, we wisely wove in liquor and margaritas and had some seasonings on some of the sauces and that were probably more geared towards our neighborhood there. On the other hand, the balance you walk is people want, they also want authentic American. That's what makes it unique to them, is that they, you know, when they want Jordache jeans or they want, you know, McDonald's, to some degree they want to get it the way that it's, what we finally found was to kind of blend it, give them the authenticity of the uniform, the design, the atmosphere, and the core menu items, but also be sensitive to some things that are just very much, there's areas that just don't eat a lot of meat, you know, and so you feature other items on the menu, and so we've gotten a lot wiser over the years on tailoring it to the particular attitudes and appetites of the markets that we're in.
Well, Ed, I know in recent years, every time we've gotten together or talked on the phone, the one topic has always been the first thing you want to talk about. So I'm going to take a chance here and ask you for an update on the Hooters movie.
It's funny you mention it. We just got a revised script in yesterday that we're reviewing, and we're excited about our team. We've got we think a wonderful director and producer, and we're probably moving closer, but I say that every other year. But the one good thing is we've got a partner, one of our franchisees, a good friend of mine, Dave Lagerschultz, who is taking the lead on the business side of it. That's the part that always drug me down, is dealing with all of that, you know, legal bureaucracy that is in, you know, Washington, in the West Coast or whatever. And I like just to work on the creative and the conceptual and get a product that's funny, tasteful, sex appeal. And I hope that's where we're going. I think we are. And, you know, we want to beat Batman and the Dark Prince. You know, it's important to come out and put our twist on things and hit a home run.
Now, tell folks how long you've been working on this and how important this really is to you.
Well, it's a natural first. There's some things to our brand because it's a very versatile brand. We've been fortunate to have a tremendously loyal and growing customer base. I mean, people have grown up with Hooters. Their children are growing up with Hooters. And And so in that respect, there's aspects that I think are just a natural extension, and the Hooters story is so exciting and so energetic that we think it will play so well on the big screen. Having said that, we don't want to put a product out there that's not just first class. I mean, we were courted over the years by a lot of folks that wanted to put some cute girls in hot tub scenes and running up and down beaches, and you know, we could probably have made a ton and it would have sold well in Europe and gone to DVD, but we wanted to have something that we'd be proud of, that would give that same refreshing combination of tasteful sex appeal and humor and the kind of Cheers meets Friends that is so much about our restaurants and what goes on in them. So we've taken a long time, 10 years and probably 2 deals that we walked away from, only because we just weren't thrilled with where the quality of the product was going to end up. And so that's why it's a fun project, but it just gets a little bit grueling if you're going to hold yourself to a higher standard.
And which genre of film are we talking about? Is it going to be a Chariots of Fire, or is it going to be an American Pie?
It's going to be an American Pie. There is definitely, as you know, and a lot of those who have followed us in the media, there is a Chariots of Fire story. I mean, in there, especially the business side of it is intriguing. It's dramatic. It's had big twists and turns over the years, you know, certainly. Then you could throw in on top of that the fun and laughter and media hype and the girls, but we probably have to have something on the nature of Gone with the Wind to accomplish that. The topic and potential is just so broad.
Well, let me give out our phone number. If anyone would like to call in and ask Ed Droste, one of the original founders of Hooters, give us a call, 646-595-3135. And, of course, you can only do that if you're listening to us live. If you're listening to an archive or you've downloaded the show on iTunes, chances are Ed's got his feet up at a restaurant somewhere. Maybe not his feet up, but he's probably at one of his restaurants. And I'm probably out in the pool with the dogs getting scratched up. So, you mentioned, the story behind Hooters, and I know you've told it many times, and I know you won't mind telling it again. How did all this start?
Well, you know, it is the American dream, and that will weave into the movie someday. The lovable losers, that always have their want. Every guy wants to have his own joint sometime, and we all kick it around. And back in the early '80s, I had a business that we rehabbed condos and converted them around Florida, and a couple of the gentlemen working with me in that arena, we would travel and we would sample other fares, oyster roasts in the Carolinas and chicken wings from South Florida, and just started piecing it together over a few libations that, if we put all these great ideas under one roof in a carefree atmosphere, threw in some humor, and then my secretary used to wear really cute dolphin shorts for all our charity softball events that we would do, and we said, boy, if we could put fun, vivacious young ladies like that, dressed like that in this arena, I think we'd hit the home run. And we started just looking for sites, and every guy's dream, we started a negotiation on a little dive. It'd been 5 or 6 other things before they'd all failed, and it was, just a dump heap. And in fact, when I joked that when we closed on the property, 2 cockroaches co-signed on the lease and the final documents. But it was such, and we got tired when we were remodeling it of so many people coming in and telling us about all the business that had failed and how they wished us well but didn't see it going very far, that we finally built a graveyard out in front and put tombstones with the failed businesses on them and said, hey, just let's make fun of ourselves. And we opened on, we actually incorporated on April Fool's Day, which is very appropriate, April 1st. And then we opened on October 4th of 1983. And typical, we had a little party. It was a birthday party for one of my partners. We pulled a prank on him, which was kind of fun and typical Hooters vein. But then nobody showed up, so except a carpenter and a plumber, and that became a little scary when 2 of your partners are Italian. and they're pretty well coming in every day going, I thought you promised us a packed house, and why are these gorgeous girls just washing the windows for the third day in a row? So, Bob, that brings on a little bit of pressure, and I like to work under pressure, and it's that old, market scared, and I was certainly scared, and a little bit of that, do whatever it takes. So I rented a chicken costume and ran around in traffic and actually chased some folks in, and we started getting a little bit of business. And then we had some other good luck. We had a Super Bowl come to town, and I'd chased down Lynn Austin. I don't know if you know the hiring there. I think you do. That I vowed to my partners that this big beach volleyball tournament, the Jose Cuervo tournament on Clearwater Beach, that had a bikini contest, that I would hire the girl that won it and get her on our billboard. And so we swam in from our boat. I carried my business cards in a plastic bag to keep them dry, and felt pretty much like a dirty little old man, even though I was pretty young then, when I tried to chase down the winner and say, hey, we're opening this restaurant, and we'd love to make you famous, put you on billboards. I got the kind of response you might expect that was, have your people call my people. Well, I had no people, and she pretty well had no people, yes.
She was a telephone operator, wasn't she, at the time, or she did something with the phone company?
GT&E, I think directory service, which would have been,
okay.
Knowing now how Lynn was in those years and still is, I would have hated to ask her, correct my spelling or ask her for the number again. I'm sure there were a lot of hang-ups in those days.
Yeah, Lynn, Lynn is, as she comes across in the ads, very smart, very funny, very provocative.
A little flippant, but yeah, but then she started winning all the Hawaiian Tropic contests, and GT&E wouldn't let her off to go compete in Hawaii or wherever. So then the call came and says, hey, is that offer still open? And I played it a little glib. It says, well, let me check and see, as if we had hired 2 people by then. And no, I don't think we'd hired anyone, so it was our first hire. And it worked out well that she wanted to photograph for the board and photograph tremendously, but then also wanted to work in the restaurants too. If you can put the person, in the store that they're seeing on the billboard, that's just a 1-2 punch. And that all came together around the time that the Redskins were playing the Raiders in Tampa, and we capitalized. We did some, we had a few little charity parties, and we got some attention just when we needed it.
You got some ball players, as I recall, that came out during Super Bowl week, and then they were telling people. It was a big word-of-mouth thing, as I recall. We got John Riggins, who was pretty much the whole Redskin team. He played hooky from practice, not once but twice, on I think the Friday or the Saturday before the actual Super Bowl, and we were sitting in there watching him wolf down oyster roasts and chicken wings, and seeing Howard Cosell, speculate on where the Redskins star run, and you can imagine what that would play like now with the whole media circus that surrounds these things, but missed practice, and he was sitting in our store, having a great old time, and that didn't hurt at all. That kind of media thing got out, and there were some articles written, and then after the game, in the middle of a Raiders victory party, which was overflowing into the streets, the half of the Redskin team, hosted by John Riggins, came in, and they ended up partying with the people that just beat them. So that played well, and that's pretty much what Hooters is all about. That all roads will meet. That it's that's the happening place in town. It's where everyone eventually ends up when they're running in, whether we're Chicago, Manhattan, California, Dallas, you name it. It's still kind of the place where the celebrities find their way to. Ed, there's a web chat that accompanies the live broadcast, and I have a question here from the web chat. Media Woman wants to know, has Mr. Droste been surprised by the number of Hooters knockoff restaurants? And was there anything you could have done legally to combat that over the years?
Yeah, well, they say, imitation's the highest form of flattery, and early on, there are things, and we've done a few, it's a fine line you walk between legally being, demanding as to people's, non-infringement, but then at the same time being a good neighbor and playing well in the community. We were early on, I want to say the 90s, there was a knockoff place called Melons, and they'd actually opened 11, 12, or 13 and ended up closing all of them. So, and there were other ones that came along, Tweeters and Tooters and Knockers. And so our pattern of experience had been that most of them came and went because they kind of thought it was all about a name or a gimmick, and I don't think ever really grasped that it's really about the meat and potatoes is a great food, freshly cooked, with fun, natural atmosphere by really, really great, vivacious young girls, and then some cute humor surrounding it. And that's a hard combination to put together successfully, and I don't think the imitators really got that. So we basically weren't that aggressive in going after them, to just kind of let them go their natural course. We preferred to beat them in the marketplace. Lately, there's been a couple more direct imitators, and we've actually had some legal exchanges with them. While it's very, very, very apparent to us and to some marketing studies and focus groups that some of them are actually direct, right down the throat imitator, trading on our goodwill, our brand. It's a hard thing to prove in court because you're dealing with a lot of different levels of perception, and so that's a hard way to go, but it's one that we won't. If we need to, nobody likes an imitator, so we need to kind of protect our ground on that frontier. So one, we're flattered somewhat. We think that performance and quality wins out in the long run, and that's kind of what we put most of our eggs in that basket for.
Mm. Now, I mentioned the boat story in the introduction, and I want to take you back to that. I'm hoping you can, from your side of things, tell me how the Hooters name wound up on the side of that boat back in, I think it was 83 or 84.
Well, and I have to credit you, Bob, for resurrecting that story because there's so many stories. I mean, it's just, it's like... And then you brought that up, and it's odd. It's funny because that story now has emerged. We got back in the archives. I think we found some pictures, but that story may weave into the movie now because people get such a kick out of it. But you have to remember, we were very much a low-budget operation. That the Billboard was the hardest thing for me to squeeze out of my partners, and I think I paid for most of the photo shoot out of my own pocket. And we didn't have enough. We didn't have money for radio, for print, or anything. And I'm still struggling. I'm still trying to, explain to my partners that, yes, I'm still the whiz kid. Yes, we still will make this place go to the moon, but I'm operating on marketing fumes. And we're coming back from Tampa one day with one of my partners, and this old boat had been sitting out in the water. And it was one of those things that it was almost, we should do it in the movie. A light almost came down from the heavens. It just jumped out that much. It was distracting. It wasn't a big boat. It was probably a 25-footer, kind of a half-cabin cruiser, but it was half sunk, and its hull was just facing the entire Courtney Campbell Highway 60 causeway. And you came off of the bridge, and that's all you saw. And where everyone saw a sunken boat or an eyesore, and everyone saw, I wonder if anybody was injured, if it sunk with anybody on it, I saw a facing for a billboard. And on my budget, the only expense was how long can I tread water and how many cans of paint can I hold to get out there, and exactly what we did. We ran to the Pickwick and probably got a six-pack of beer, too, in those days, I'm sure, and drove the car down to the beach and swam out, treading water with a I don't know if I went spray paint or brush because it seemed to think I was carrying a brush in my mouth, but and not very artistically painted the HOOT, had to cram the ERS in a little bit. Came back, pulled back, stood on the beach. Now there's one of our Hooters waitresses, Brenda Lee, claims that she assisted in the painting, so I'll give her credit, but I sure remember doing a lot of treading water on my own there. But we stood on the side. It was a masterpiece, and chuckled and said, "I wonder if anybody will, if it'll stir any interest." Well, the next day, maybe it was your paper, Bob, big picture in there with a whole little byline about Hooters, a new little restaurant down on 60, and some enterprising. Yep. Well, you're the guy then.
I am.
You're the reason. Well, geez. And from there, the radio station started calling. So tell us about your restaurant. And so we went into we went into all the basic elements, which were new. See, that was the biggest thing. That now there's a ton of casual dining restaurants out there, but when we did Hooters and when we tried to get the word out, there was nothing like us. There was a Bennigans, Chili's, Chi-Chi's, Fridays, all the Fern bars. Nobody had done a wood floor casual dining place on purpose. There were a bunch of them up and down the beach, by natural design, but nobody's ever done it right in the heart of businesses and whatever, and then marketed it the way we did. So it was intriguing to folks, and it got them coming in, so credit to you, Bob. And we did a radio. Then it became a thing, well, it's a nice billboard, but how's the world going to get rid of it? And we always pride ourselves in being good neighbors. So we didn't need this thing to run too long. We didn't need to become a thorn in the visual impact of the city of Clearwater there. So we actually worked with a radio station to raise money, and to raise the money to raise the boat to pull it out of there. And they actually did a live broadcast from the shoreline, and so we ended up doing the right thing in the end and got more exposure for that, and we got quite a few more people in the doors, and that's all we needed. A Hooters, once people get through the door, they have such a great experience with the food, they have a great experience with the atmosphere, that we hook them. And the key was just getting them in, and that's what we needed to be doing, and that's what that accomplished for us.
And how much money do you think you guys got? And this question is coming from the web chat. How much money do you think all that free advertising?
Advertising wasn't expensive then, but back then. But locally, it was everything to us. You could have done an ad. Chicken costume, $200. You went off on a billboard, $1,000. Sunken boat, priceless. Running around. Yeah. I mean, really, to us, that kind of exposure was just unattainable. We didn't, other than buying the ads. So I would say it was well into the thousands. It was probably $20,000-$30,000 in exposure by 25-year-old standards, which would put that close to $100,000 plus, maybe even more. Why, are you going to have your attorney call me now, Bob? Or
Oh man, if only I was that smart. No. But I mean, it is interesting. I mean, over the years, Stunts have really gotten you guys a tremendous amount of publicity and press attention. I mean, that's the kind of stuff you couldn't buy. You either, I think, and it's one of the things I've always admired about you, Ed, and of course Bob Passwaters too. Want to give him credit, but you guys have always been so clever in coming up with things that no one else would have thought of, no one else would have executed, and you've gotten great dividends from it.
Well, you know what it is, too, and there was a book. Who's the guy, Vic? Is it Michael Vick? And we're in it predominantly on ways to, do things in a fun way. And stunts is a good word. I like to be discriminating in that, though, in that we look for fun things, fun twists, to put our little spin on something. If we get some exposure out of it, so be it. But also, it's hard. It's a fine line also to walk, and we find this with our franchisees, that we don't like trampling on things. We're just not going to, if we can bring our Hooters blow-up out to a kid's soccer tournament for the Saturday and make their day, that's great. And if somebody gets a picture of it, looks cute, great. Do we like to have our owl barging into the middle of somebody else's parade or something? We like to be tasteful. All of our little, I call them stunts, are twists that are fun but not intrusive. And sometimes it's hard to explain that to all of the many stories out there, that we're not about trampling on other events or whatever. We had fun with the Phillies, when Lynn Austin was ball girl there. She met and fell in love and married Darren Dalton, the catcher behind home plate, and we had her billboard in center field. And when he signed his $19 million contract, we snuck out and stuck on there 9.5 M on the billboard. It was bad enough as a catcher he had to look at that billboard every game out in center field, but then we put the basically that half of his contract was going to go to Lynn, and that was fun, and that's the kind of stuff everybody gets a kick out of. When George Bush was coming to Clearwater for an event up the road, we got a big black limo, parked it in the front, got a bunch of guys in black suits and put the little microphones in their ears and had them standing around the limo, and people flocked in thinking that, that was before they had all the entourages now, with the helicopters and everything, but people, they wanted to believe it. They had fun. They got a good chuckle out of it that, hey, maybe he was inside. When there was a charity, it was actually Battered Housewives, Battered Women, was doing a concert with Frankie Avalon a mile down the road. They'd only sold 100 or 200 tickets and were desperate, and they didn't have a budget. And we said, well, we know that kind of deal. So we got the local car club to come out for 3 or 4 days, park all their old retro cars on. Got sand brought in for nothing. We put a big net out front, volleyball net with volleyball, put a whole beach scene in front of our restaurant, all donated, and put on the billboard, put the big thing that said live Saturday night, together again, Frankie and a net. But, the net was the volleyball net. But people came in and they sold out the concert. It got buzz, the radio stations picked it up, and it was a fabulous concert, and we did it on, again, fumes. But those are the kind of things that we just love to bring some innovation. Bob Passwater is great at it. Now, you ought to see the ideas that don't make it to the top of the table that he brings up. They're pretty scary sometimes, but a lot of them are just really home runs.
Wow. How important was Lynn getting into Playboy in the big picture?
I think it was huge. I think we probably would have gotten where we were going just slower. Because it was really the elements of people just loving the food and the wings and the atmosphere. But for us to have that happen in a big way and have a national magazine like that, when primarily back in those days our target demographic and customer base were males, and certainly Playboy was a predominant, that and maybe Sports Illustrated, male magazines of the time then. And Lynn, to her credit, insisted on the article being written in that the interview for her centerfold be done at that location. So it was basically a 6, 7, 8 page, story of Hooters, which just catapulted us to fame again, got a lot of local notoriety, and it didn't hurt any to have a Hooters girl in our uniform when it was on. Most of the shots, as it wasn't on, but that gave us a kind of a star status just at the right time. And, the radio stations picked up on it again. And it kept that little sizzle, the Hooters girl and that our Billboard girl had catapulted, right to the forefront of all this. And so it was really very instrumental. It was a catalyst, much like the boat, And it carried on. To her credit also, we did signings all across the state of Florida, and she did it for the benefit of the MS Society, and so that raised almost $250,000 in a month, which for a 5 or 6 little store chain was dramatic, and it showed that, hey, we're still a neighborhood player too, and that went on to be the forerunner of a back to camp tournament that they had in Jacksonville that raised millions. So good things come from those neighborhood promotional gestures that we did.
Now, she was the first Hooters girl to be in Playboy, but not the last, as I recall.
Now I throw a figure out I can't verify, but some don't always weave it into their story. But on any given year, I would guess almost half of the girls that end up in there have worked at our Hooters. The most recent, Jeff Garcia's wife, a lovely, wonderful lady, was Playmate of the Year 2 or 3 years ago, and I met her when they first came to town, and she's just very gracious. And I was a little intimidated, and John Gruden, who was a cook for us in our Tampa Hooters in 1985, excuse me.
85.
And he was kind of showing off. He knew the Hooters guys, and she goes, well, hey, I love Hooters. I worked in the Cincinnati store for 2 years. And it's like everywhere you turn, some young celebrity lady has had a stint in the orange shorts most of the time.
And today, even today, it's gone beyond just Playboy. You can turn on Big Brother on CBS, and one of the leading players in that game right now is the very attractive, very sassy Keisha, who is currently a Hooters waitress, right?
Well, and two of the girls next door, Hugh Hefner's little entourage are Hooters girls, former Hooters girls, and then I love my wife Marcia and I will be sitting on a Sunday night or whatever, and we'll be watching Fox, and invariably they'll cut to some Hooters joke, or Bart will say something, or we'll be watching all of our favorite shows, and they'll cut. The Office will cut away. They'll head to Hooters for lunch, and do 5-10 minutes in in the Hooters, and you kind of just sit back and go, my gosh, you never thought you'd be seeing your little brand on prime TV.
Well, speaking of what you never thought you'd see, did you ever imagine that Hooters would still be going strong and Bennigans would close up overnight?
Gosh, isn't that amazing? That's a sad thing, because I know we all grew up in Bennigans and did our early dating and post office, brainstorming, and that's truly an American tradition. I'll tell you, it's something that we're always mindful of in the Hooters world, is to keep it refreshing. That it's, we're always dynamic. We've got our own radio show. We've got our own magazine. To a certain degree, in this kind of a business climate where you have to have rules, you have to have quality service, you have to have regulations adhered to, the balance I think we bring is to still bring that spontaneity that the girls bring, and the cooks and our customers, that make it refreshing, so that after 25 years you go in and you still have a great time, and it's still a breath of fresh air. And so we're always doing things. We sponsor John Daly on and off, and he can be a handful at times, but he's never dull. and our customers that get that and kind of are that way themselves, they love his heart, they love his sense of humor. He's playing in the PGA Championship this weekend. We hope he does well. He's like every blue-collar guy, just trying to struggle. He loves friends, he loves beer a little bit like we do, and it's just, I think some of that injection of ebb and flow and what's going on in the communities, if it's events, if it's charity, it's that. I hope it's keeping us vibrant, which I think is a key to 25 more great years.
Well, the ultimate irony to me is that would be, I should say, is if we learn that Hooters Inc. or Hooters of America is looking nationally at Bennigans locations as future Hooters locations.
Well, the first thing we'd have to do is throw out all the brass and the fern. We actually converted. It was a Bennigans-like place. It was about the 4th or 5th store we did in Atlanta, and the joke was, I think we did this. I think we put a mannequin. Somehow I think we highlighted. We kept the obligatory brass and obligatory fern just to kind of attribute, but that, to go the other way. Like our casino in Las Vegas. One of our best phrases is that, well, we're like all the other casinos out there. We've got marble. We just cover it up with wood, but we really like being the alternative. And most of the time there's a Bennigans around the corner from everywhere we were. So I don't know if we'd be jumping on a lot of those locations, but maybe some of their employees. They had a lot of good, hardworking folks that, we'd love to have as we're expanding.
Now, I told everyone in the introduction that you're still very involved in Hooters, and of course you are, but Hooters has a fairly unique corporate structure in that you and your partners many, many years ago sold the rights for franchising and going national to a group in Atlanta. What is how do you explain your group out of Tampa, what you do and what you cover, and then what Hooters of America does?
Well, we modeled it after the great business plan of the Arab nations over in the Middle East. It functions about that way also. My partners, we created it. We owned the brand. We granted a license to a gentleman named Hugh Connerty, who then fairly soon sold that license right to a guy named Bob Brooks, who passed away a year ago. But basically, we gave a license to expand under our brand the Hooters concept through company-owned stores or franchise stores across the world. And so we would have little in-family tiffs, but basically, cooperatively, we all worked together then to take that out. And to HOA's credit, they invested a lot of money in expanding that brand. They're based in Atlanta. They sponsored Alan Kawicki and the NASCAR, who went on to win the Winston Cup in the first year they sponsored them. They sponsored the Hooters 500, which was 3 years of a NASCAR race that attracted 170,000 people. They sponsored the Hula Bowl. So basically, as the owners of the brand, we were supportive. Once in a while, we get into some gifts, but they then did all the development and expanding. We retained the rights to the Tampa Bay area to have our own restaurants, to the Chicago area, and then Manhattan and that area. And we still build stores there very aggressively. We also have the rights to the Hooters Foods, so we are we're in thousands and thousands of grocery stores with our sauce and our breading. We also retain now, through some deals done later, the rights to do casinos, so we have our Hooters Casino in Las Vegas. So that basically the architects now of the growth and the direction of the brand and units and franchisees is all done by a group of HOA in Atlanta. Our group works with them. We participate on boards with them. And then through another license, I have another company that does merchandising and that and marketing, and we also produce the Hooters calendar, which was, is enormously successful. It's probably the biggest and most successful of its kind now, with over 400,000 that will be printed this year after 400,000 last year. So, it's a great bunch. They're totally committed. This thing is intoxicating. People buy franchises and they give up their other businesses to just get involved, because you have so much fun hosting people, driving the business. A lot of our industry is somewhat challenged right now because of the economy, but we're pretty system-wide. We're almost about flat in sales. We're not down that much because people still need to come to Hooters. They need that they need, especially now, that escape. So we're not finding the drop in sales that the other systems, the other restaurant concepts are, and that's a good thing. And the people involved in it recognize that charge, that our job is to keep the energy up, keep the food up, keep that Oasis thing going, and we do so much in the community that is kind of an intoxicating thing too, that you get a warm and fuzzy out of a lot of the charitable things we're involved with that you can impact so greatly. So it's almost a lifestyle in itself.
As you mentioned, some of the many spinoffs, the calendars, the hot sauce, things like that. What have been, and I'm thinking probably at the top of the list are going to be shirts and clothing, but what have been the most successful Hooters spinoffs and some of the least successful? Well,
the airline was intriguing, and that was a bold venture by Bob Brooks, who always wanted to own an airline, and it ran it first class. I mean, it ran on time. It was safe. They didn't have an accident. People had a great time on them. The routes were great. They went to cities that didn't have the big hub problems. It was very cool, and it was fun to see these giant jets landing with your brand on the side of them. They got hit big time. Being a new company, they got hit big time by the fuel, the oil increase and all of that. So basically, they got out of that business. So that probably wasn't one that we would. I also say that I don't think I'd want to go to a Hooters hospital if it were ever we were ever to brand that. Now, having said that, we find that when we select good extensions or good promotional partnerships, that we bring a lot to. We bring the notoriety, we bring the excitement. I mean, a Hooters movie is going to be fabulous because the joke is that half of the writers are going to want to pan us, so at least they're going to talk about us, you know. And we're joking that we should just give them their crib notes before, so they don't have to sit through the whole movie, so they can just go out and pan us and have their facts right in front of them. But you know, the NASCAR was a natural extension. The Hooters foods, so you can our sauces are pretty famous, and to be able to go in the grocery store and, you know, pick up a sauce and bread and go home and do the wings. You have that experience at home, whether it be for, you know, upcoming football game or whatever the big event, you know, Super Bowl, they fly out off the shelves. It's been great, and it's helped the brand because it's given us a credibility in the grocery aisles that I think some of the demographics, you know, women in some cases, that are a little reluctant to you know, brave the first trip to Hooters, probably feel a little more comforted by the fact that, hey, you know, I've been cooking with this stuff for a couple of years. It's great for barbecue, so that's a natural extension. The casino has been fabulous. We've you know, learned some lessons there on being in that business, but people love it. They go out, and you know, if you've been to Vegas, you've got, you know, all of the big, beautiful, grandiose places, and you get lost in them, which is kind of fun for some folks. But in our little neighborhood out there, we're right on the Strip. We've got 5,000 units of MGM across the street. We've got 3,000 from New York. We've got a couple 1,000 units for Tropicana, a couple thousand, and then we sit right in the middle of them with 686 units and just a little dive. You know, it's clean, it's beautiful, but it's wood floors, and people love it because you can be there and half your party can be over having beers at Hooters, half can be playing some blackjack, half can be in Pete and Shorty's having, you know, shorty burgers and watching the football games, and you're all kind of right there, and then you head out and conquer the Strip, the big monsters, and you come back and you all gather in the little dive again, and that really plays well. So that's been a great natural extension.
Well, some of my favorites that we've talked about over the years, I was thinking about this last night, were two that never happened. One was when the San Francisco Giants nearly relocated to St. Petersburg, and you talked about building a giant Hooters restaurant nearby.
Oh, God, yeah.
That would have been great. And then my other one was, and I think this may have just been more conversational with us, and maybe I'm wrong, but was when the old Hall of Fame Bowl in Tampa was seeking a corporate sponsor.
Yeah.
Hooters briefly discussed putting its name on the game because, you know, who wouldn't have loved the Hooters Hall of Fame Bowl?
Well, and that was down. We actually went to the point of we had the big board meetings. Our board all got together, their board. It was a love fest, and they had the logo designed, the whole bit. It was going to be the Hooters Bowl. After a year or two, we're going to drop the Hall of Fame even. Mm-hmm. And Jim McVeigh is a very good friend of mine. In fact, we were having lunch with him today, I think. And I both got together afterwards and said, you need a name sponsor. We'd love to be in a bowl. We'd love to be on every sports page in the fall, you know, when they start speculating who's going to be picked. But both of us, this gives that back to doing no harm in the community, have some fun with things, but only improve them, don't taint them. And we both looked at each other, and I go, I know, I've got to find a way to wind my group down because we were very, very controversial back then. We still are to some degree, but back then I knew that it would create stirs on the campuses if all of a sudden, you know, the Hooters Bowl was going to pick Michigan or Wisconsin to come and against Alabama or whatever, that there would be those that would have concerns on those campuses, and while we would have milked just tons and tons of exposure, it wouldn't have been good for the universities, and it wouldn't have been good for the bowl game. So we reluctantly, and I even helped them go out and chase down the Outback guys to try to get them on that bowl, knowing that we'd regret it every minute from then on. But it was the right thing to do, and it was the right thing for the community, and but we would have had a lot of fun with it. We would have jazzed that bowl. It's a great bowl game now. I mean, it's it's run so well with so many great universities that come to it. It's first class.
And just so people know the end of that story, when Hooters did not go forward, Outback Steakhouse, another Tampa Bay area creation, stepped up and put its name on the bowl, put up the money, and that's the Outback Bowl. That's the
and the joke is, we were sponsors of, we were minor sponsors, and we said, and they're great to us, Outback, they're good friends, but the joke is, and as soon as that happened, all of our advertising went out back. They didn't want us trampling on the field with our owl, so we pretty well won. But we still enjoy a great relationship with them. We've got, we're coming up in the world. We've got Wi-Fi now in our restaurants, most of them, so that, that's, we're never opposed to change. We like to keep that little joint atmosphere going, but we also, we recognize the 21st century is upon us. So we're always looking. We've got our own radio show, that rocks. So it's, all of those kind of involvements are all exciting to us.
Well, Ed, now I'm thinking that we should be broadcasting Mr. Media live from Hooters if there's Wi-Fi there. We'll have to talk later.
Yes.
As we kind of wind down here, I still can't believe this. A San Antonio Hooters girl was recently crowned Miss Hooters, and her name is Sarah Hoots.
Yeah.
You got to tell me that this is out of the brilliant marketing minds of Ed Droste and Bob Passwater. Is that
no? I would no, and you know what? I would love to say that, but it was in Hollywood, Florida, and she's a beautiful, beautiful girl, very charismatic. She's been in marketing promotions and slinging wings for years down in Texas. And trust me, it had to be legitimate because she competed against 120 girls internationally down in Hollywood, Florida. And if there was, it was neat that Hoots could win it, but 115 girls would have clawed her eyes out if she wasn't a clear superior talent there that that earned it from the. We had top-notch judges. We had that obviously Daly. We had Dick Vitale. We had who's the race car driver that won Dancing with the Stars? That Julio
Helio Castro.
Yes. Yep. It was a star-studded panel of judges. So maybe they went to that name out of familiarity, but.
That was just some story. So, last question. 25th anniversary coming up about 6 weeks, I guess. You've already outlasted Bennigans. We talked about that. What is the chain planning for the next couple of weeks? How will the 25th be celebrated?
Well, for the whole year on the 25th, our customers can come in, and there's different programs. There've already been some win, quite a few. You can win $25,000. There's a scratch-off cards. They have drawings in the stores, and so every 25th of the month there's going to be a party. But we're going to do a cool one on October 4th. We had the big pageant party in Miami. So we're going to do just our old-fashioned quaint thing at the original store, which is a Saturday, October 4th. We're just going to invite all of our friends, and actually people are coming in from quite a far. We're just going to do an old-fashioned parking lot tent party with a band and some wings, and we may have a few surprises thrown in there because it is us. We've always got to have a twist or two. But we're getting too old. But it's fun when we invite the alumni back. We were counting. There's over 250,000 young women that have worked in our restaurants over the years, and currently almost 20,000 currently employed. So, when they decide to gather someplace, and I don't think our parking lot's big enough, so I don't think we'll be chasing all of them into town. But our reach is pretty dramatic when you think about that, of all of those great folks that have, and it's really been up. They are the ones that have been bringing the wings and bringing the beers and smiling and going to the charity events and making kids happy and making, there's a lot of dying last wishes have been to come to our restaurants, and we try to make life a little brighter for anybody who walks in those doors.
Well, folks, listen, you can learn more about Ed Droste and the original Hooters in Clearwater, Florida by visiting his website, www.originalhooters.com. That's one word, originalhooters.com. mrmedia.com. And Ed, it's always a pleasure to talk to you. I enjoyed it today, and congratulations on 25 years. It's hard to believe, but it's...
Well, and you're a partner of it. Thank you so much for your being the catalyst, Bob. This has been great.
I take full responsibility. You're absolutely
There you go.
All right.
Great.
Hey, Ed, thanks again for coming on the show today.
I loved it. All righty. See ya.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye. And, of course, for dozens more celebrity and media newsmaker interviews, surf over to our main website, www.mrmedia.com. That's where you can listen to my earlier conversations with the stars, writers, and producers of Heroes, Curb Your Enthusiasm, Army Wives, 24, The Big Bang Theory, Pearls Before Swine, Tell Me You Love Me, The Dark Knight, and many others. And please think about writing an online review of Mr. Media, casting a vote for Mr. Media, or marking Mr. Media as one of your favorites, whether you listen to us on Blog Talk Radio, Digital Journal, Blueberry, Zencast, Odeo, or iTunes. Folks, thanks so much for joining us. I really always appreciate when you take a few minutes of your day and share it with Mr. Media. Come back again real soon. Bye, everybody.